Well, so good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, slept well. You had a good Sunday, yeah? It was raining a lot. Oh, well. I looked it up, actually. Bangalore's supposed to have 0.5 days of rain in February and 0.7 millimeters of rain. So that was, I think, 10 times more than what that was. Okay. I said not to all of you, but some of you were here, please, these sticky notes are incredibly valuable and they are incredibly powerful. But they're only powerful if you put little things on it. So 5 words, 10 words, you make it big. If you put like sentences on there, and nobody can read it. And that's actually maybe one of the reasons why when I go here and I ask you to actually put some dots there, you didn't put a lot of dots there because nobody could read it. Too little, too much information. And the powerful thing about these sticky notes is when you see something is wrong, you take it off, put a new one on there. But it needs to get into your eyes. So please get off from your mode that you want to put everything on these sticky notes. Put 5 words on it. If you have a second thought, take another one. They're not that expensive. Okay? Because otherwise, it makes no sense to do these ones. This is almost like a lost write-up because we cannot really use it that much. So what I would ask you later on to do in the break is that you please go and look at these again. Because we are 50 people, I asked to put like 5, 6, 7 dots on there. 5 times 50 is 250. So I should find 250 points up there. I maybe found 30. So there's a lot missing. Okay? So please, do that because it can give you some insights later on too. Now, I'm trying to find. Abhishek, where's the remote? Think about this. How many have written one or up already? This is it? 1? You 2? We need to have many, and they need to be finished by roughly about lunch break. So I would advise you to go through and really think about it. And I dedicated this part here, which is a little small, because one more time, we have 50 times 2 is 100, right? So we don't fit 100 on here. But please fill them out. And they're available for everybody to look at later on. And please, also for this one, do not try to write a PhD thesis. Just some bullet points, maybe a drawing. Make it clear to everyone. Don't write it for you, write it for the other people, okay? And so this is the last time, basically, that I mentioned this. Please put them up. They need to be up here by latest lunch, preferably before. Actually, preferably by the coffee break. Coffee break, by the way, Abhishek, is when? 11:30. Okay, so 11:30 is coffee break. Okay, so please do now for the next 3 minutes what we did yesterday. You have somebody who gathers, so you basically try to find out what were the highlights, the points. Please remember that this is important for the end. Maybe just before you do it, let me just go forward one more time here. I go back to this in a second. Here. So what you need to be doing, there will be some time on Wednesday. So maybe on Wednesday I will do only a little lecture, like 2-3 hours or something like that. And then you will have time to actually do work together in groups more intensively. What you need to get done is a presentation, documentation with your steps and findings. Your steps meaning your steps from finding a problem to actually finding somewhat of a little solution. So how did you get there? And please do not exclude things that you think are not important. There's a lot of things that, or you think is silly. All the silly things and all the crazy things need to be on there. Because silly and crazy things are the valuable ones. Put down, obviously, title and contributor, so all these kind of things you need to do. Use part of the evaluations technologies that we will use in this one. Some of them we have not done yet, so you can't put them on. And then you need to come up with like a way to present your findings. So here's the documentation and the presentation part of it, right? And so this is one group right here. So please not only one person presenting, maybe 2 or 3. And please remember that 50% of the grade will be based on the presentation and 50% will be based on the test. Right?
Can I add?
Sure.
So the GIAN usually gives 2 kinds of certificates. One is just participation, coming, sitting here, even if you're on, you'll get that certificate. Okay? But one more certificate is grade card, which is kind of your credit, which you can encash if BMS has option, or if not, that grade card has value, because it will be from MHRD. In that grade card, we'll mention what grade you have got, and that is 50% what professor will evaluate you at the last day of presentation, and 50% of marks will be MCQ and jumbling and things like that.
Yes, and we will make this up. We have not done the multiple choice questions yet, so we'll roughly we'll have about 5 or 6 per day, roughly. Okay. All right. So just this is not important for the time being, but just so you know what's coming up, so that you know what you have to collect, what kind of information you have to gather. You should keep all these things together and later on exchange and later on make one big file out of this. So going back to this, please now go to create a summary of the last day, of the Saturday that we had, by exchanging maybe your ideas, maybe dot voting. You should do that. You should be able to do this in your group. I should not necessarily have to tell you how to do this. So you exchange ideas, say what was the important one. Maybe you do some kind of dot voting again, and then summarize this as well. Okay? And please, I know I said that many times, but please try to keep it short. Yeah, discussing things forever and ever and ever is not really solving problems normally. So you need to try to get things done relatively quickly, because doing things quickly means you have no time to continuously think about it and discuss things. You have to just get it done. So I'll give you about 5-6 minutes for this, okay? Starting now. Go on. You need another minute or 2? Done? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 minute, right? You're done? Very good. Okay, let's get moving. So the next couple of slides I show you, they're actually completely new because I put them in this morning, and I put them in this morning because I read an article this morning, and it was just, I got this sent. Yesterday I told you about this medical futurist and some other things, some other blogs. So this is another one, a blog coming from a guy called Dr. Daniel Kraft, and he's basically running Exponential Medicine, which is a big conference in beginning of November every year. So it's very, very exciting to go there, but it's also very exclusive and expensive, I have to say. It costs $5,000 to attend. So it's only for 3 days, so you can imagine. But I think it's worth it for some people to go there, nevertheless. But you can sign up for the blog for free. So maybe something I can advise you to do. So here it is, Exponential Medicine. You can see that right now, but the title is Paradigm Shift in Precision Medicine in Top Health Tech News. So he always summarizes the top stuff that you can get. So Dr. Daniel Kraft, you'll find him very, very quickly when you Google him. And so what I found today was a little article, and it says healthcare by 2028 will be doctor-directed, patient-owned, and powered by visual technologies. TechCrunch. So I think the link is down here. And so it's brand new today, so I thought it was kind of cool, but it was fitting. Visual assessment is critical to healthcare. We all know that, right? Whether that is doctor peering down your throat as you say ah, or an MRI of your brain. So basically what he wants to say is that, you know, this visual assessment, which we already have done and which already has started using the X-ray, will get even more dominant, but it will actually get more dominant in respect to things where the doctor cannot see it anymore, but the machine can see it. And the machine is the only one that can see it. Yesterday I showed you a little bit, no, not yesterday, before yesterday, I showed you a little bit of things where you can convert visual information into maybe signal information, which even makes the amount of information, the content of information even higher than just looking with the eye. Because you can actually crunch the data, crunch the visual information to get even more out of it. So what the purpose of this one was is to actually point out that what we have, and I think that's part of the topic of this lecture class anyway, what we have with MRIs and CTs, we have very complex workflow. And if you really think about it, the CT is around since the end 1960s, beginning 1970s. Now we have 2019. What really has changed? I mean, a lot of things have changed. But it's a complete incremental innovation. Things have always gotten better, a little better, a little better, a little better, a little better. But in essence, the design has not majorly changed. And MRI is around since the early 1980s. So I started working on MRI in 1988. That was very exciting because there was not a lot of MRIs around. And I remember in Germany, when I was trying to come up with the first mobile MRI in 1993, then people said, why would we need this? We have already 100 MRIs in Germany, and we don't need any more than that. You know how many we have now? 2,500. So there's a lot of things that happened. And a lot of misconceptions, because in people, and that's also a keynote from yesterday, people think linear. They don't think exponential. And the same thing happened with MRIs. It went up from 10, yeah, very expensive, to 20. Maybe I'll point out again, what was one of the Ds in the 6 Ds of the exponential? The second one, disappointment. Very disappointing. You know, it's very expensive, very big, very not available. And then at some point in time, it becomes available. And everybody has it. But still, not much has changed till the 1980s in terms of design. There is still a huge bulky magnet, which is the most expensive device on that whole MRI. And it comes with very complex workflows. So it needs a special room, it needs dedicated shielding, and it's all kinds of dedicated things. It has very, very strict patient requirements. An MRI is relatively slow, so you cannot do everything moves, right? Not good for the image. So there's a lot of restrictions. Elderly patients, it's a tunnel system. How many of you are claustrophobic? There is always some. Even if you don't admit it, there is a lot of people who cannot stand in this tube for a long time. A lot of restrictions. And it's, of course, very expensive. So even the cheapest MRIs, if you buy them new, are in the order of €500,000, euros, whatever that is in rupees, times 80. So very expensive. Even if you buy a used one, they are expensive because the upkeep, the installation cost, and the operational cost, they're the same on whether it's a used one or a new one. So what they're saying basically is, and that's what I showed you yesterday with the example of this MR injector. You remember that? Not when I say yesterday, I always mean the day before yesterday. So it was a 20,000 euro device. It still is a 20,000 euro device. And people have not touched it because it was around for a long time. It kind of works. And people thought there's not a need to innovate. And now you can maybe come up with solutions that cost 20 euros or 200 euros. And why should that not be the case with MRI or CT? I can tell you, and I will actually show you later on also an example where my group in Magdeburg has built a CT scanner for 5,000 euros. I would admit it's not quite as good as a normal CT scanner, but the question is, do you always need the top quality for everything? So quick example, if you actually try to stick a needle into a patient and try to hit a target, you actually want to follow the needle. You kind of like know where you have to go and you want to see the target. But everything else is not that important. So you can actually reduce the quality. This is a little bit what we talked about yesterday, day before yesterday, when we mentioned blue ocean. I will go into this one more time. Raise the value of one thing and just make that incredibly important, but try to reduce the cost of the whole thing. So, having read this, so I'm sorry I didn't really format it very well, we just copied it out of the blog. He basically believes, and it's not a belief, we all know that most of the workflows will be digitized in the next 10 years. And by the way, we should actually differentiate and should maybe clarify what digitization or digital healthcare means, because that's not the same. Digitization basically means you digitize, you make digital a previously analog process. So analog process is writing things down, calling the patients in, maybe booking appointments, this is all analog. You make that digital. This is not the same than digital healthcare. Digital healthcare means you actually try to get completely changed workflows in. You use digital information to come up with new information and to basically determine the outcome of a patient completely different. Has nothing to do with digitization, which is a pre-requirement, but it basically means we use the complete portfolio of digital technologies that are around to create a completely new workflow. So, interesting, this is the chart, and what do you see in this chart? What kind of chart is this? It's a linear chart, right? It's a linear increase. Now, I can already tell you I don't believe this chart, because I believe that there will be something happening. You see here, I don't know, it's not working. Okay, I forgot my pointer. Do you see the bottom green, the darker green one? That goes up a little bit. It's basically the computer vision-based imaging. I don't believe that will go like this. I think that will go actually much steeper towards the end. And it will take a lot more of the conventional non-computer vision imaging away. In general, it still means that imaging is growing up, but I believe the part of the computer-based imaging will dramatically increase. Now, what we need to do, and this is part of the topic of this class anyway, is making you remember that from the first day. Cheap, inexpensive, portable, robust, small, disruptive. These are the things you need to think of, not making more complex, bigger, more expensive. And I think there's a lot of people who think the same way right now. So we should make actually imaging simpler, quicker workflows, lower cost, lower expertise requirements, also meaning you may be able to do it at home yourself. You don't need to have a doctor for that, at least for the acquisition part. And you need to actually maybe look at live imaging things like ingestible cameras. We already know that, right? There's movies on that one where there's somebody shrunk, put into the blood flow, and then fixes up the body from the inside. It's not a completely new concept, but this concept could be actually realistic. And what I also believe is interesting is that when we add up all these new generation sequencing, phenotyping, molecular imaging, we'll be able to do the diagnosis significantly before it happens. Prevention. It's not really prevention because it's just early detection, but early detection could actually lead to not having these emergency cases anymore. And that's the expensive part. It's the emergency, and it's also the one which causes the biggest trouble to the patient and the biggest trouble to the relatives. So the whole environment is shuttered by these kind of emergencies. And what happens at the same time, I thought that was very interesting, is if you look at the green one is the physical visits to doctors going down and the virtual visits going up. There's a little bit of more of an exponential in there, but still not dramatic. I know for a fact, Kaiser Permanente, this is a huge insurance company in the US, in California, probably the biggest one in California. They are actually started adding virtual visits to their offering about 5 years ago, and in the meantime, 25 of the patients go to a virtual visit first. Because they don't have to go to the doctor, they don't have the time, they don't have to sit in the waiting room, etc. Same thing could happen in India, I guess, with all the rural area problems. You know, I mean, access to doctors is not there, but maybe access to telemedicine is there. Okay, so I thought it was cool, and I thought that was cool too, because that's what the guys from Boston kind of like envision as the MRI of the future. I would assume that some of those are the magnet coils, and some other ones are the gradient coils and the receive coils, but make it a lot smaller and make it a lot more open and a lot less complex. And there's a lot of people working on technologies. You were Siemens, is that right? Yeah, I saw you just connected with me, right? So when you look at Siemens, for example, they are working on these big devices, huge complex devices, and GE and Philips does too. There's a lot of companies who actually think, or a lot of startups who think that the future in MRI is not in making higher field strength, but in making dramatically lower field strength. So there's actually some companies also in the Boston area, Massachusetts area, where they're thinking about using imaging systems which are only a few Gauss. So just a few times more than what the Earth magnetic field is, rather than having a 3 Tesla magnet which has 30,000 Gauss, 60,000 Gauss actually. So huge stuff, huge difference, completely different thinking process. So please, and that's again one of the goals that I have in this class, is get away from always looking at how it has been done before and trying to make it a little better. Maybe also completely rethink or re-evaluate your thinking process by saying, maybe I can do something completely new and just throw all the other stuff that has been done before away. Now, it's not simple to do that. I'm quite aware of that. But this is what really creates disruption. That's what really will be valuable in the future. OK, so we talked about this. That's why we can go quickly over that. So my review of the day, of Saturday. Quick run through. I think there's no more comment on this. I don't really want to go into depth on these ones anyway. I just want to throw them at the wall. So the idea is not the point. Making an idea viable, commercially viable is the idea. Otherwise, it's just an invention. And that's not a new thing, right? This already was Mr. Edison came up with. OK, we went a little bit through showing how quickly the world has improved in the last 25, 30 years. And I think I just want to repeat this one more time. The world is actually getting much better. That still doesn't mean that we should stop, but it should give you an idea what technology has done in the last 30 years, because it was basically technology dominated and related. Because if you really look at the time of the history, for thousands of years, nothing has happened. Nothing much has happened. And then at some point in time, people started coming up with pharmaceutical, penicillin, and all these kind of other things. They started up coming up with the other technologies, being able to look inside the body, the stethoscope very long ago. This is what changed healthcare. And this is what made actually the world, at least from a healthcare perspective, much better. It made it also much better with respect to agriculture, food production. Food production was for thousands of years the same. Nothing ever happened. And in the last 50 years, most things happened. Now, we did also some bad things, I have to say. You all know that. We pollute the earth more and more. We create more and more plastic. We actually destroy the living room of a lot of the animals. All these other things we do that are bad, we maybe need to look at that at some point in time too. Well, not at some point, really quickly. OK, so these are the problems that we have. Aging, demographics, population growth. It's all kind of like the same thing. Well, it's not the same thing, but the population growth in combination with a longer aging is double, right? It's almost a quadruple effect. But we still believe that actually that the population will probably end up to be about 10 billion, and then probably not grow that much more. Cost delivery, availability of healthcare is a major issue. Inequality, major issue. Some people have it who have money or live in the right place, and some others don't have it. In Germany, you have it, and whether you're poor or rich, because we have a social healthcare system, so you're lucky to live in Germany. So it's a lot of luck involved, too, if you have good healthcare. Now, data. Is data the solution to all these problems? I can't say for sure, but I think there's a very good chance it will be. So data collection is something that we also have seen is happening in an exponential rate. We collect data enormously. So there's a lot of changes that we probably will see in healthcare. And these are the changes that have been growing for the last 50. We have basically established a system. You are sick, you go to the doctor. Doctor sends you to the hospital. The hospital sends you home. You go to rehabilitation, or your parents or your spouses take care of you. Maybe that will change. Maybe most of these things will be done at home in the future. OK, you need to ask, however, when you analyze the system is always, I think money is always important, unfortunately. Sometimes I say unfortunately. So you need to understand who pays for the healthcare in the future. If it's really up to you to pay for your own health care, then it will be the same thing than it is right now. People who have money will have better things, and people who have no money have less good things. It will stay the same. So we may have to find out how we're going to do this. I have no solution for that, so I cannot give any advice. Personally believe that the government has to take more charge in this one, my personal opinion. We need to move to prevention. We need to democratize the healthcare, so it needs to be available to everybody. That's very interesting because we are talking continuously about how we get rid of doctors, right? How we get rid of certain things, but we have actually not enough at the moment, not enough medical staff. So for the time being, we have a huge problem with medical staff. I think that's also when you look at your problems in the healthcare with India section, you'll find that a lot of you actually wrote down there's not enough people around. But anyway, understanding the problem leads you to maybe innovation potentials. So I can't say it often enough, you need to find a painkiller for a burning problem, meaning you have to understand the problem first before you can find a painkiller. And you need to dig and dive into the economic aspects, the workflow aspects, and the technological aspects of these problems, rather than trying to sit down and develop something that maybe nobody needs at the end of the day. There's lots of technologies, so the ones that I marked here with orange, that's the ones that at least I work on, I believe for healthcare are important. The other ones are important as well, but maybe only indirectly. There will be a transition point that will be later, so I believe in the future we'll do a lot more at home with our sensors, with the devices that we have at home, and then at some point in time later we'll switch into professional care. And I think that was, at least from my perspective, the most important thing is that you do not think complex. And maybe if you look at complex technologies and complex ways, why didn't you try to think about how can we make this easier? That's a huge innovation step as well. So if you really see things that are complex and complicated and maybe expensive, a huge innovation potential would be to say, opportunity would be to say, how can I make this less complex, cheaper, more available? Because the advantage of this is, you know there's a market. You know it's already there. You know it's used. You know that people need it. And then it's maybe easier actually to argue for an innovation case. Okay, so I think I'll go through this one here, blah, blah, blah. So quickly read it, okay, so we don't have to go into deep depth into it. I was trying to also get to a point that we may have to change research. And maybe there's a difference between the applied research, and I would call this group here, or at least the intentions, applied research, rather than deep basic research. I would not want to touch basic research. I think that's a cool thing. But I think that applied research needs to be much more problem-orientated than it is at the moment. And I was trying to get to you something we call moonshot thinking. Does anybody know where the moonshot thinking, where the expression comes from? Never heard that before? Apollo. So basically, John F. Kennedy in the 1960s says, we need to be up on the moon by the end of the decade, in 1969. And that's actually what happened in 1969. The Apollo actually reached the moon. But at the time he'd said that, nobody had a clue how to actually even achieve it, how to even touch it. So he basically gave out a moonshot, which is far away, which is something you can't even grasp at the moment. You can say, how can he come up with that? We have no idea how to do this. No idea. And he just said, we need to be on the moon by the end of the decade. Get working. So you need to have some visionaries and some people who really push you sometimes to do things, and to do things that are not really at the moment foreseeable, where you don't see the goal. So moonshot thinking is a big topic these days, at least in my segment, where I kind of like try to reinforce people to think in terms of moonshots. That's one of the reasons why I like to do this exercise with thinking 10 or 20 years ahead, because you could maybe develop some moonshots based out of this. What could happen in 20 years? What would be really cool? And then there's something called MTP. It's not on there, but we'll get to this, I think, at the last one. It's called massively transformative process. So what that means is that everybody in this room should have a massively transformative process. I like to work on reducing or increasing the age to 100, the average age to 120 by the year 2050. Completely far away, nobody has a clue how to do that, but your intention is to work towards this goal. By the way, you can always change goals, so nothing you ever set is carved in stone. You can change things. But I think if people are, maybe, I'm not saying that you are like that, but if you're kind of like sitting here and you say, I don't know what happens next year, I don't know what happens in 5 years, I have really no goal, I kind of like float along, you may have a problem. And you may have an intellectual problem because you have no motivation to do more than you ask for. But if you have this enthusiasm and this drive to actually do things that you can maybe influence right now, but you still have it in your mind, and go for it. I know a lot of people in my age group and in my, they're relatively well off. They're thinking completely different now. Like one of my friends, he's the owner of a huge software company, relatively rich. He says, I want to spend my time on doing good things, social things. I want to work, getting rid of the poverty. I want to work on making sure that children get the right education. That's what he's thinking of right now. That's his massively transformative process. So please have that. At some point in time, think about this. I should have given you a link on your, where is it stored, Abhishek? In Drive, in some Google Drive or something? So I gave you some links, or I gave you some files, and one of them should have been the massive transformative process. So look at that. You can actually analyze it for yourself and maybe even work that out. It's a little work program. It actually explains it quite well. Okay. So this is what we talked about when I went through the injector system, and we mentioned already this morning. Look at things that are complicated, complex, expensive, not available to everybody, and try to see whether you find a way or whether there's an alternative way of doing it with much reduced cost, much reduced complexity. There's a lot of these topics laying around in healthcare, tons of them. Then we talked about the value proposition canvas. I thought this is, for me, that's the most important tool, because this tool makes you actually go out and see, first of all, to identify who your customer is, and then actually go out and see what this customer is working on, how this customer is working, what kind of problems this customer have, and how can you actually come up with solutions or help or gains for this work. Now, this basically shows you can do that for if you have a product, and you evaluate on whether your product actually creates gains. So that will be the left side, what you have already. Or you mainly look first at the right side and say, what is the customer's job? What does he have to get done? An anesthesiologist has to make sure that the patient is deep asleep, has no pain, that the lung function, the heart function are working well, that the whole body is in good shape, and that he wakes up again, the patient, at the end. So these are the kind of jobs that he's really responsible for. What is the kind of pain he has? Well, one of the pains that he has, at least when I look at that, they're sitting around basically idle and don't do anything for a large portion of the surgery because nothing happens. It's good that nothing happens. Not wrong. I mean, we don't want things to happen because that's bad for the patient. But they're basically sitting around. And if you go into a surgery, that's when I do this, they play around with their cell phone, they do all kinds of weird things because they have idle time. Now, could they not spend their time a little bit more productive? So if you could give them, for example, something where they could do 3 or 4 or 5 surgeries at the same time, kind of go left, right, or have monitoring systems which kind of like gives them the overview and they can react relatively quickly, or maybe even an AI system that observes the status of the patient, and then kind of like said, hey, by the way, I think there's something coming up with this patient in operating room A. It's not happened yet, but maybe there's some tendencies which indicate there may be something happening. Then he runs there. So there's a lot of things that you can do when you observe that and you analyze where you come up with ideas. And then what you should do, when you've done that, you should actually prioritize that. So what is the highest, the most important job that has to get done? What is the highest gain you could provide? What is the biggest pain you could resolve? And then you focus your product, service, AI, software idea based on that first. Now, you don't ask one anesthesiologist, you ask 5. And you see on whether there's a commonality to that. And if you find out that certain things are on, you take your sticky note with 5 words on it, or 10, and throw it away and put a new one on. Okay? So very, very powerful. Please remember that, and we will actually use this today again. And using that, you can actually build an elevator pitch. You can build a sentence which describes your idea by using the most important parts of each of these segments. I think that's very powerful. Obviously, don't copy every word for word. You just make a nice sentence out of it and make a sensible sentence out of it. But it's a very good starting point. Okay, then we talked about the exponential technologies and all the 6 Ds, right? Disappointment, disruption, and then we have dematerialization, democratization, and demonetization. So it gets all smaller. It gets basically faster, smaller, cheaper, and with that available to everybody. Now a big thing, now point on you again, big thing for Siemens. What if things get smaller, cheaper, more available? Is their business model in jeopardy? Yeah, it's big time in jeopardy. Because if the MRIs now don't cost $1 million anymore, but they only cost 100, they have to sell 10,000 times more to get the same margin. Very difficult. You cannot employ 300,000 people. Siemens has 300,000 people employed. So you need to have a revenue stream to employ those people. That's, by the way, why big companies, big companies are very smart. They're not stupid by any means. They know that that will happen. But they try not to really work on it too quick. They like to have that. They know what's going on. They know what's happening. But they don't try to actually implement it themselves because they would destroy their own business model. Also clearly understood. I mean, I would not do it any different if I would be Siemens. And maybe they're also trying to shift things now from, while we stay with Siemens, from maybe being just a provider of hardware, big equipment, to a provider of solution packages, which is including software, including data generation, data analysis. That's what Siemens is trying to get to right now. So if you really look back, and that's why I put this up, if you really look back what has happened in the last 5 years or 10 years, so even in your short lifespan that you had, if you go back 5 or 6 or 7 years, and you really are honest with yourself and said, would I have believed that that would have been available 5 years from now? I probably would have said no. I say that all the time. I think, oh, I could not believe that that would have happened. Okay, and obviously that will affect healthcare as well. By the way, this is another good guy I can recommend, Eric Topol. I like him a lot. He's actually the vice chair of the Scripps Institute in San Diego, and very, very well known. He just wrote a book. I just ordered it. It's not even on the market yet. So I can actually look it up, what it's called. I think it's called, because it's only available in Europe in March. Let me just go to my Amazon account, and I'll just show you what's Amazon, and let me look at the orders, because I ordered it yesterday. So where is it? It's called Deep Medicine, that's right, exactly. So I will get it on the 27th of March, and I think in the US it's already available. So very probably from what I read, at least in the Forspan or in the, it's probably a very worthwhile book to have. They also have ebooks, but I am still one who believes in hard copies. I'm not buying ebooks yet. So it's basically showing, this book, how AI will change and revolutionize medicine. That's at least the content of it. And I can tell you more once I've read it. So anyway, he's a very good guy, and you can actually subscribe to his, who's on LinkedIn? So if you're on LinkedIn, you can subscribe to him. So you can just follow him, and it just sends you the mail. So it's very good. I really enjoy reading it. So anyway, he has just said, well, healthcare is actually in a deep disaster condition, and it needs to have several changes. And one of the changes that probably will happen is that we may not actually be the ones developing so many cool and big equipments anymore, maybe these visionary imaging systems, but that we will be able to actually fix some of the diseases before they actually happen by gene editing. I mean, looking at this number, that 32,000 out of 50,000 diseases are caused by single point mutations, which means should be easy to identify. But really isn't. Because just because you have the gene mutation doesn't mean you get the disease. But still, there is a good starting point for preventing future diseases. And so a lot of things will happen. Paradigm shift in healthcare. You will go from becoming sick to actually preventing you from becoming sick. And we will actually need to go to a value-based approach. So right now, on whether you get, so what does the hospital get when you go to a hospital, on whether you're leave sick or healthy? Do they get the same amount of money? Yeah, they do. They get the same amount of money, right? Doesn't matter. What? Well, because you go in there and you basically, you have a surgery done, right? And the surgery turns out after 3 months it was not successful, or after 2 months, the hospital has gotten the money already. Then you go to another hospital, or maybe go to the hospital again. They treat you again, charge again. But that will be changing. It will be value-based. So if it's not working, they don't get paid. Which means the hospital is much more interested in giving you the right treatment, because they may not get paid if you do the wrong treatment. And it will be much more personalized. So it will be a medical treatment and a diagnosis for you, but not for all girls 25 years old in average. Everybody will be their own person. Okay, and then we also talked a little bit about AI, and I think this is the word up there, the AI apocalypse. I mean, yes, I believe that being not afraid or careful about AI is wrong. You need to be careful. On the other hand, I think you cannot change it anyway. You cannot prevent it from happening. It's already there anyway. And you need to make sure that you have guidelines and rules that make sure that there is no bias going on, that ethical concerns are at least addressed, and that you are sure that somebody at least, or many people, several people know what's actually based in these AI systems than just simple one person. I just read another article yesterday about how biased data is. For example, they used in certain AI programs in the US, coming up with certain results, they used predominantly white Caucasian women, because that's what they had the data for. I don't think that was purposely done, that they wanted to exclude Indians, or I think they just had the data available. But now this data is used in the world as a reference. They said, this is what it is. And now they said, maybe it actually looks different for black people, or for Indian people, or for Chinese people. Maybe it looks different, because we actually only used the data of white Caucasian female in a certain age group. So please be careful. The AI typically is not, it's not the AI's fault. It's a programmer's fault. And it's very often not the AI either that creates the problem, but it's the data beforehand that is already biased. And so this is very important that we monitor that and that we watch what happens. Okay, so we already seen that AI is basically has a huge advantage in a lot of areas, and that question is, how do we actually get it into the clinical workflow? If we know it's better, we should use it, shouldn't we? Well, we don't necessarily. At least in most areas we don't. And we still have to ask the question, how do we actually get paid for AI? Okay, and these are the future trends that I believe will happen. and where I believe a lot of innovation will happen, maybe where there's good opportunities for you. And please think of your own country first, and think of your own problems first. You have a huge market here anyway, huge opportunities, so think about what are the real problems that you can address. That's the reason why we do this, why we did this problem area, and we did this little SWOT analysis, and we'll go a little deeper later on. Okay? All right, future wheel. Do you remember from yesterday, day before yesterday, I asked you to think about technologies that you are sure will be around in healthcare in 10 years? Everybody has one? Yes? You're sure? All right, so why don't we start the game of future wheel. So everybody take, please, a sheet. So every group. You probably have to place yourself on the ground or something. Everybody has one? You have one? You have one? Who needs? Everybody has one? Okay. So, I just tell you the concept on future wheel first. Actually, I'll show you the graph on it. So the concept is, or the idea is, that's why it's called wheel, we put the technology in the center. And then we discuss, you discuss, not me, you discuss, what kind of direct implication does this technology have? So I'll give you an example. If we all believe, we're going outside healthcare now, if we all believe that we will have self-driving cars in 10 years only on the road, what is the direct implication? Direct implication is less accidents or no more accidents by being run over by a car. Second implication will be, do we need driving schools anymore? No more driving schools, maybe, right? You understand? You get the point? Please keep it short. Just analyze what kind of direct implications this technology will have in healthcare. So, robots in there, dedicated, maybe you make it really dedicated, a robot 4, and if you say that, then you probably don't need these surgeons anymore. And it probably will change the hospital stay of these patients. Okay, got it? So the first thing that I want you to do is you basically, I'm going to show you right here. Do we have a pen? So the first thing you do is you put a little circle in the middle. And in this circle, you will later on write the technology as clear as possible, as short as possible. And then you actually, once you have done that, but I'll show you this, you actually will draw 4 spokes, like in a wheel. And these will be the direct implications. And later on, after that, we'll have another one. He will draw another 2 spokes, and there will be more implications based on these implications. Okay, so all in all, it will be a little bit looking like this, like a spoke, like a wheel. Okay? So the first thing I want you to do, and also everything we do here is quick, I want you, among yourselves, discuss the technologies that you believe you should put in the middle. So everybody's technologies you have here, and if you like this at the end of the day, we can do another one of those. So let's go relatively quick. The whole game takes about 8 minutes or 10 minutes. Okay, we can do another one. So please keep your technologies that you believe just somewhere on the side, and later on maybe use another one if you want to. Okay, so next thing we do, as mentioned, we actually identify the first technology, and I give you 2 minutes for that, and knowing you, I'd give you 3 minutes. So please discuss among yourselves and then write this technology in the middle. Okay, starting now. So the next thing I want you to do is basically look, so put this down and then look at your central technology. What are the implications of this? That could be positive or negative. It's no rating. What does it mean? What happens then? So the only thing that you should come up with and discuss is, what does this technology, this service, this whatever you put down, what are the implications of this compared to what it is right now? Positive, negative, doesn't matter, right? Okay, and you have, please draw these spokes. You can draw anything. I mean, it's not, there's no rules to this, right? The rules is just you have 4 implications. You have, for this, another 4 minutes. I told you not to, but you did it anyway. So now you look basically at the second, you look at your spoke technology in the middle, then you look at the implications. Let me give you an example. I sent an example from up there. They wanted to do robot-assisted surgeon or robot-assisted devices. So what is the implication on the surgeon? Do we need as many surgeons? How does a surgeon train? You know what the problem with the surgeon is? They have to train. But if the robot is doing this, how do they get the training? Very important question. So these are the implications. That's what I was looking for. Now you have these first order implications or indications. Like here's one, it's called the programmable pill. And so only 1 pill a day. That's true, but that's not maybe a direct implication. A direct implication would be complete reduction of pills. And what is the effect on the pharmacies? Can you print it at home?
The pharmacies will still have the same output. It's just
Not sure about that. Don't argue with me. I don't really want to know. That's for you to argue. Okay? So now, please, look at these first order implications and try to find what is the second order implication. So, for example, taking this one up there, and you have said now we have the robot-assisted surgeons, and now we have training problems and education problems for the normal surgeons. What is the implication of that? The implication of that is that the doctors need to train differently. They don't really know how to do the surgery perfect anymore without a robot. So these are the kind of second order implications. So please only look at your first order implication and see, what does this mean now? So using it my car before, the self-driving car. So the self-driving car is you don't have any accidents anymore, right? With that, you don't have so many people injured anymore. The question is, what does it mean for the insurances? Do you need a car insurance anymore? They don't hit each other anymore. What does it have an effect on the emergency departments in the hospitals, which are like 30% dependent or 50% dependent on car accidents? These are the second order implications. Got it? So you got another 4 minutes for that. Well, I give you 5 minutes to start with. Okay. So who was finished now? Nobody? Pretty much finished, right? So what do you think? I mean, we'll share some of the results in a second. What do you think? Why we're doing this? Why are we doing this? Anybody have an idea? What's the point? Yeah, no, not really. Because the idea of the technology is not your idea. That's something you see as a fact, right? You think that will happen anyway. So it's not your idea. It's just something that will happen. So why are you doing this then? Let me ask another question. Is anybody of you come up with things that they were not thinking of when they initially put this technology down? Did you see something in the second order indications that, oh, I wasn't even thinking about this? Did you come up with that? So there's a nod, there's no nods. And that's the important part. Because if you see something that nobody else sees, everybody knows this technology is going to be around. It's a fact, right? And now we're looking for first order implications and then maybe for second order implications. The further out you are, the less likely somebody else had that too, came up with that too. You can use this as an innovation idea. Because this technology will be around, lots of people will work on it. I mean, putting down AI is not specific enough anyway. But when you will see that something else will happen further away based on this technology, because of this technology, you can use that as a starting point for innovation. This is the starting point for where you will go in. This is your idea. 2 levels up. Okay? So who wants to give a little insight? I'll just maybe 2 of you, 2 groups in insight, what they used and what kind of end result and what kind of surprising things they found. You look like you want to say something. No? Yeah, you want to present. Come on. What did you do? What came out? I'll force you now. Just stand up and just show it to everybody. This is not, there's no good or right, good or bad. There's no right or wrong. There's just, I just wanted you to share a little bit what you did, okay?
Okay, we choose about virtual surgery.
What surgery?
Virtual
Virtual
3D
surgery, okay.
Okay, in that we found the first order implications to be patient-centric, time-saving and reliable, increase in cost, and the hospitals could be reduced.
Okay, and what is the second order implication? What is surprising? What came out that surprised you?
We wouldn't need so many hospitals, so the infrastructure might decrease. And what is it, right? And the surgeries will be time saving if it's virtual, and the doctors can do it quickly. Like the number of surgeries in a day can increase if it's virtual. And then, yeah, but the thing is we need to create awareness to the patients, and the doctors will have to be trained on how to do the surgery. It's a new technology, so they'll, yeah.
So basically your insight would be that the most important thing is information, communication, and training.
Yeah.
So, well, if you know that comes, you could have an app which, basically allows a doctor to work with his AR glasses at home
Yeah.
and trains on surgeries.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like why we do this, not the initial one. The initial is just a starting point. What's important is the red ones out there, what you
Yeah.
have marked as the red ones. Okay, very good. So I thought this was pretty cool up there. Why don't you say what you...
Okay, so we've come up with an AI-assisted virtual diagnosis and treatment. Our first primary implications include a huge capital, society acceptance, unemployment, patient-specific care, ethics policies, awareness and training. Now, in huge capital, what happens is it's not just us who are involved, I mean the doctors and the patients, it's the government, it's the investors, we have capital investors. Now, each of their dynamics will change. Society acceptance, how does the society accept this new technology? The government should make it more, the government and the investors or people who are selling this product should make it more acceptable. How is that possible? You give them subsidies, you give them some kind of perks. And next is unemployment. This will definitely create a little of unemployment because the jobs of paramedics and caretakers decreases significantly. Also, surgeons' movements and surgeons' involvement in this will become less one-to-one. It will be more of the surgeon, the machine, and the patient.
Okay. So what have you learned?
When we looked into this, we thought it would be a very personal device. Then we realized the minute you introduce technology into it, you create, it's not a barrier, but you do create a wall between the patient and the doctor. That's where the patient may lose the feeling of a human touch, which is most important for human beings. You look for a human touch.
Okay, very good. I would almost disagree with you because I believe that this technology would make the doctor more important as the one who has actually the virtual touch because he has more time maybe.
All right, true. I wouldn't deny that, but for people in India, it's a hard situation to believe otherwise. Because for somebody living in the most remote rural village, you have only one PHC, one primary healthcare center. And that center also depends. The doctor is in and out, and you don't always have a doctor around. So when you do have a doctor, and the doctor says, you know what, I'm going to use this device to check what has happened or what's wrong with you, patient loses trust because they're not very well educated. They don't understand it. Unless we change that system, we will not be able to change this system.
Okay, so so basically the insight that you have is you need to educate the people, the patients, that
Everybody.
is a good thing.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, very good. See, this is the reason why we do this, is to come up with maybe some areas that we want to focus our attention on. Okay. Now, I would advise you that every time you look at some new stuff, you can play this game. Just pick anybody. You don't need to be experts at all. It's actually almost better you have no experts. It's almost better you use people who are just like, can you help me? Just let's do a little big thought process on this whole thing. And you're very welcome to play this anytime. This is anyway what we're doing, what this class is for. I want to give you tools. And I want to give you tools you can use to actually evaluate on whether something is innovative, not just inventive, innovative, whether somebody really needs it, and also to look out for opportunities. We're still in search modus, right? We have not really found the cool thing that we want to further on evaluate and maybe further on go down to find solutions. But not much longer. I will remind you again, by lunchtime, we need to have these things up there, okay? So please fill them out. They're important. If we don't have enough, we can't continue, okay? So, and I expect everyone to put one up at least. And you have now plenty of opportunities. You heard, you can look up there what the Indian problems are. You can look at what the SWOTs are. You can look at your own drawings of what you did. You can look at the future wheel. You can analyze the exponential presentation I gave you. You have so many base points now for actually thinking of what could be a cool thing to do. Be as specific as possible, okay? All right, let's go on. So I like this game, and I actually like I like doing this with every class I do, because it just creates a little awareness that of little things you do may have a big impact down the line, okay? So this is an example of what this looks like, okay? High fives to everyone. Ooh, you can actually get up for that too, so I don't even know when my next doodle comes, no idea. So is it time for break now, or is it 5 more minutes? So we start. It doesn't take that long. Unfortunately, I think it should take more long. I'm doing a lecture now together with another German university, and we call it ethical design considerations for medical development. And we want to put more emphasis on ethical developments. You already got some input on AI. What are the implications on AI? Because we don't know what happens anymore, and we need to find out what happens. Now, there is a lot of other things you can look at, like CRISPR, like gene editing. I feel very much okay personally, but it's, again, a subjective thing. I feel personally very much okay if my gene defect that I have is corrected, that prevents me from getting prostate cancer in the future, if that should be I feel very, very good about that. I have no problems accepting that as morally and ethically okay. Maybe somebody else doesn't think that way. It needs to be a joint discussion on what's ethical, acceptable, or not. I have a little bit more problems when I think about changing basically the childbirth, or creating a manufactured kid. Let's put it that way. I have a little bit more problems with that. But some other people may think it's okay. We just need to have guidelines on this one. I have a problem with that, but some others may not. And that's the problem. We need to discuss and need to agree on what is a standard. Now, this is actually almost the only chart I typically show on ethics that is important. And if you just read the bottom one, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. So maybe there's even legal things that allow you to do certain things, but the question is it really right to do that? Is it really good to do that? And I think that's, for me, the definition of ethics, and the definition that unfortunately varies with everybody, maybe fortunately varies with everybody. And you always should know, does anybody know what the dual nature is? What that means by that? You probably know that, but what is the dual nature? Dual nature of everything. Yin and yang, the good and the bad. Everything you do may have a good thing. That's actually future will again. Something good may coming out of it. You do this because you want to do something good. You want to do something because you feel it's the right thing to do. Please think about it. There may also be a bad thing that comes with it. And it's pretty much always the same. Every time you introduce something new that has good effects, it could also have bad effects. And that's what we call the dual nature. There's always a good and a bad part about it. And most of the people who want to introduce technology and want to work with this type of technology only see the good part. Because I want to work with it, right? It's my thing. It's my cool thing. And I'm ignorant about the bad part about it. So please have a little bit of a look on that too. Just think about what actually could be a thing that is actually not so good introducing this technology. Future will, again, could be a good way to find this out. Now, there's a lot of initiatives. We don't want to go into detail on this one. But I think I put this on your reading list as well. So I put the complete EU program on ethics in there. If you're interested to read it, I have not read it completely. I quite honestly admit that. It's a very big document. But they want to put a lot of emphasis on making sure there is a physical security, political influence, and then there's basically a security measure around everything that we do with the new technologies. Again, not for me right now to go into the depth on this one, but also mentioned here is addressing dual-use concerns. I mean, the initial dual-use concern, I think that's a very obvious one when you think back, is coming up with the nuclear power. Nuclear power has a good part. It creates power. It creates energy. And it creates energy relatively cheap and relatively powerful for the amount of effort you put in. And then it has the bad part. You can create bombs. And you can destroy the world. The good and the bad of it. And pretty much all little things have that too. Okay, this one, I don't look in the detail on this one. I was just wanted to give you one chart on this one, which I thought was interesting. Well, obviously, we will lose jobs. So when we put AI on it, we have discussed this several times here already, that we will lose jobs, right? Or jobs will be transferred. Now, is that good? It's almost the bad part of this dual nature, right? It's almost the bad part about it. Can we prevent that from happening? Maybe not. Maybe we can. Maybe we can dampen it down. Maybe we can reduce the effects. I think that's part of what we have to look for in the future, is that we also minimize the effects. Don't be too capitalistic and say, I don't really care if thousands of people lose their jobs. We'll have to reduce the effects on it. Now, do you guys believe that in the short term we'll actually all be unemployed? What happens with robots replacing people? What happens to these people? They're basically on the road, right? What are they going to do now? Where else do we need people, though? Remember? I didn't understand. Yeah, but look back at what we discussed. We discussed people getting older. We need probably a lot more caretakers of these people. A lot more people who actually, look for them. There's a huge demand and a huge increase in people that we need for that. So this one here shows that there will be a huge loss of jobs because of robots being introduced in the American labor force. On the other hand, look at this right chart. So one robot costs about 6 jobs. I'm not really that worried, to be really honest, in Europe or even in the US. I'm not so worried because our manufacturing is already pretty robotized anyway. So we are focusing more on actually making things more efficient and coming up with new ideas. But it's traumatic when you see the effect on China. The company that creates this cell phone, Foxconn, it's one of the largest companies in the world. They have basically introduced robots everywhere, and they have cut their workforce down by about 50% in the last 5 years. Now, how can we fix this? Does anybody have an idea? Ever heard of universal basic income, UBI? UBI basically means that everybody gets a minimum amount of money that actually allows them to survive. How would we get this UBI? It has to come from somewhere. People think now about taxing robots. Why should the robot not pay an income tax? You paid an income tax when you were replaced by the robot, right? You basically made money, and then you had to give the government some money off what you made. The robot doesn't. Why shouldn't the robot be taxed? These are some of the ideas that people come up with now of actually trying to compensate for the loss of the robot jobs and to create maybe some form of basic income. The other thing which you see on the top right here, this graph, the white one is actually the jobs that we will lose in manufacturing. And the black one is the jobs we need in healthcare, in like taking care of elderly people, these kind of things. Now, the real problem with this is that almost matches up. If you add them up, all the jobs that are lost in manufacturing could be actually put into healthcare. Do we have the same qualifications? A manufacturing person and a healthcare person? Completely different. So while we theoretically would have enough jobs, we have a huge problem with education, a huge problem with training these people to actually do that kind of job. So this is more of the problem that we have. Another innovation potential, by the way, is training people to do things. Because a manufacturing person who just did his lifelong kachukata cannot take care of medical problems. Needs to be trained. Maybe he's not even capable to be trained. So this is, I think, one of the problems that we have in society is that we may have enough jobs, but we may have lacking qualifications for these type of jobs. Okay, so anyway, Peter Diamandis is one of the guys, again, that I recommend to look at. But on the other hand, you have to say, is it really a good job to sit behind a cashier in a supermarket and do all the time, could you put it over? Is that really a good job? Would you be sad if that goes away? You would not be sad, but the person who loses the job is sad. This is the problem. But in general, if you would have another job for them that is a little bit more stimulating, I think it would be a good thing. Okay, I think before I do that, maybe I'll just go quickly through that. Then is it already there? Abhishek, is the coffee there? Okay, so let me just go through this, and then we're done. So this is one of my examples again. So that's what we're working on. I think I mentioned some of this already. What we want to do here is we create actually a low-cost X-ray system. So we have a little robot, and this robot can be mounted onto a bed. And this robot basically comes with a you see that in the middle. This is an X-ray tube, very cheap one, and then we have on top of it a little ultrasound probe or a SPECT probe. This is a gamma camera, and you basically can replace these probes in the robot arm and can do multifunctional imaging. This is relatively inexpensive. That would basically combine an ultrasound scanner and a gamma camera and an X-ray system in a hybrid system. Now, think one more time about this value proposition canvas. That's the most important thing. What is the reason why we want to do that? Because we see that there is actually fairly little equipment used in the OR suite. If you really go to an OR, you will very regularly see a C-arm, an X-ray system. You will very irregularly see a gamma camera, and you will very irregularly see an ultrasound scanner. You don't see them. They're not there. People don't use it. X-ray maybe, but the X-ray system you use has a huge distance between X-ray tube and detector, which means you have to have a lot of X-ray power. Otherwise, nothing arrives on the other side. And with that, you have a lot of radiation. Using a small X-ray tube, which you can put really close to the area of imaging, reduces the radiation and reduces the cost and reduces the power that is required. So for the time, we decided that there's a burning problem of missing diagnostic hybrid information in the OR suite. And we wanted to create something that is easy to use, is very portable, compact, combinable, fairly simple to use, and then combine some AI computation, which you basically know exactly which area you have to scan at. Get the point why we do this? Now, whether that actually will be happening, we have created a prototype, I don't know. But we used, again, this value proposition canvas to see if we would have this type of product, what kind of gains would it create? What kind of pains would it relieve? What would it really do? And then try to match it with the surgeon on the other side and see whether that really is a fit. So having said that, we have now coffee break. Yeah? Please do not forget to put these things up here. So either now, we have 10 minutes time, or latest after lunch. Okay?